Okay, so so we're live, and what we want to do now is actually go through the work we've done over this afternoon, which was essentially before we broke up into teams, we came up with these kind of categories or meta patterns or whatever, and then we went and each group worked on one, two, or three, or four of these patterns. So, shall we start with yours, or? Yeah? Okay. So this is Open Classroom, also known as Open Hybrid Classroom, right? By the Wittgensteins, yeah. Do you want to give us a quick run through of this?
Wittgenstein.
Wittgenstein. Yeah.
Experience? That's the first time for writing.
Well, you can then make it more. Yeah. So we did this. We have a couple of candidate names that Alex actually helped us with. So we have open invitations that might be a thing, or hybrid audiences might actually also be a thing. Context where there's trust between you and your students. Everything is going according to plan. Everyone feels safe, but safe is also kind of sedimentation. So you feel kind of bored in your teaching, perhaps, and you want to feel alive in your classroom. So that's kind of the context. The problem is that you can kind of see that your students receive education as disconnected from the others in society. Education then runs a big risk of becoming meaningless to both students and teachers when we feel that it's not in any way connected to what goes on in the real world. And teaching also has become everyday business before getting on with the more important matters of doing research and other proper academic work.
Can I stop you here for a second?
Yes.
So this is, the classical issue of where does a context end and a problem start?
Yes, we do that.
And for me, the rule is that the context is what you cannot change. The problem is what you want to change. You're feeling bored with your existing approach and a bit still and tired. This is something you want to change, right? So if actually implemented this pattern and you still feel a bit bored and tired, and then you haven't succeeded. So that's why the context, I think, is yes, you're an experienced teacher, everything is going fine, there's trust, the course is going well, and that's not that you don't want to change. But you want to change that there's this lack of excitement or.
So yes, we discussed that it is part of the problem, but from the order of writing, the core problem starts with the problem statement. So it's actually part of the situation. You're getting tired, which of course is implicitly also a problem. But the real problem is the disconnection.
Just wanted to have that on record since we broadcast.
So we really had a lot of discussion about that, and I think it's something that may easily change in the future.
Okay, so then
maybe you could say something like get used to your approach and stop looking forward or for other things, which is a context, not a problem in itself. Because if it runs well, but then comes the problem. Because of that, you start also to see that the students are disconnected and
you're disconnected.
So this context leads to the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's go on with forces now.
Anyway, you can say something
Or
about forces, perhaps.
Oh yeah. You went through the problem. Right? Do you want to go through the forces, or
I think
or should we just jump to the solution and?
So actually, surprisingly, we haven't that much trouble with the forces this time.
Okay.
It's still only a valid list, and it needs to do some reworking, but I think there's a lot of the forces that apply to the pattern are covered already. So And that was really, these are things that are shaping the solution, not so much the core problem, but they are sometimes unique to the side benefits, and sometimes they clarify the problem on the level.
I like these, they're all phrases, these dualities. You want to save space, but you want to be connected to the world. You want to allow them to fail, you don't want to embarrass them.
Yeah. So that's something we didn't mention in the introduction. So what you want to try in this course is to create a conflict or show the conflict in different interests, and having buts and whys in the forcing section is always a good thing, because you show, okay, I want to have that, but I also want to have that. I want to have the best of the cheapest. And
because usually, if it's 7 p.m. and you're hungry, there's no problem. You just go and have dinner, right?
Yeah.
If it's 7 p.m. and you're hungry, but you're in the middle of discussing a pattern,
yes,
then there's a tension to resolve. Okay.
The solution, bring the food here.
So this is, hang on, bringing the classroom back to normal. This is still part of the forces, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we just jump to the solution, so then we'll dive deeper into these later, but just the core of the solution. Yeah.
So the solution you've been working with is opening up the classroom in a way that provides the world insights and reconnects the classroom with the world. And the way the solution works is by not making people participate in the classroom, but by inviting people to join the classroom either online or physically. And it's that peer multiplication of both visitors and your students. So it's not participants, but visitors. So it can be like streaming your classroom online and having people visit it, and it can be having people come into your classroom to sit and visit it. And what it does is it broadens the student's perspective about there might actually be people watching or coming, and it also makes teachers reflect on why and how we are doing this, because we need to have an argument if people listen and might come. So it is actually also reinvigorates your teaching, because you suddenly think about why you're doing this. And it can be like handing out flyers in the local communities, tweeting out a link to a YouTube stream or something.
As a quick win, you just read it out in a different way than it is written down.
Yeah.
And the way you said it was I think was good. But the way it is written down now, it's slightly different. It says opening up the classroom both and wise. That sounds more like a positive consequence. That's what you want to reach. What you said, open up the classroom in a way that invites, and that's actually the solution. And that's the action you do.
Yeah.
It's a very little quick thing.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot
about open up the classroom in a way.
Open up, yeah. So the solution is often phrased as directive. Therefore, do this. So open up the classroom. Invite people.
Okay,
Invite people.
What can I do about the problem? Open up the classroom.
Okay.
And then there needs to be we also call these we work with how can you then do that? Hand out flyers in the local community, tweet it out, do something on the university mailing list, or what's it called? Yeah.
So we really discussed what is the core structure and what are the details when you decide to go for the
Yes, so that's also, for example, design an invitation together with your students. So that's also a way of making sure that they have faith and trust in that process, because they also have agency over it. And the last part was the Bonellas effects. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually, I wasn't really following the template all the time. I was actually using the new format as well. So effects is the positive, or the how do we call it? Positive consequences, yeah. So, and then we have also the negative consequences, which is under however. And we also added the section values and vision.
Yeah, and the values we saw that this really engaged or required actually. So the distinction you made, Christian, between what it requires and what it promotes. So to do this, it really requires empathy. And it requires empathy both from the teachers and the students, because I'm also, as a teacher, putting myself out there. So if the students say I'm a crappy teacher and stuff like that, and it's kind of extreme, that might be a problem. And it requires faith and trust, and what it invites for growth is belonging in the world. Because it kind of reconnects you with your teaching, grounding you with your teaching and reconnecting in the classroom. And then we went to the tables, to the workshops, and saw through all the missions that was there. And the ones we found was kind of really aligning along with the opening of the classroom was that openness promotes critical interaction by confronting us with unexpected opportunities and challenges. Like having that thing in your head that there might be someone watching or there might be someone coming and you don't know if there is or if there's not. It kind of, yeah. But it also promotes critical interaction and by confronting us with that we need to I need to have an argument for why I'm teaching this way, because there's people watching and they might not know why, so I have to kind of go positive. And hybrid openness promotes exploration by making uncertainty part of the course requirement. So it's also something that you talked about establishing a contract in the beginning. So this will be, we will be opening up the classroom. You should be prepared for this. There will be, and why would we do that? And then the last one, hybrid spaces, strengthens belonging by broadening, deepening perspective. So this is really about broadening the perspective, like having that broadened experience of, okay, people can come in here, people might be watching somewhere. The classroom is actually part of the world. It's not something that is off the grid.
Okay. So, any kind of questions or comments? There will be coffee.
Liabilities when you shouldn't use it because the negative consequences.
So, are there limitations on, some?
So
For instance, if you're in a clinical psychology course and you're discussing real patients, I don't think that's when you want to open up a classroom, right?
Or you should find a way of talking about real patients that are still.
I think probably some cases, just don't open. I mean, it's just the risk is too high. If there's a risk of harming someone especially someone who isn't in the classroom.
So there's actually,
But that's also,
there's part about that. So not embarrassing people or the students is part of the solution, and there's a rule of engagement. That's why we move that to the core of the solution. So it's right. So there's.
But it could be that there are people who are not present in the classroom, but who might be affected by this exposure, right? So it's not just informed consent. I mean, it's if you're going to talk about things that or not even clinical psychology. I work at a teachers' college, and if you're going to talk about children that you work with in school, then you might need to think whether it's appropriate to open the classroom or not.
It's also failures have a larger impact.
Good. Okay.
And also just trying to think of it. I mean, talking about the ethical considerations. What if we have a longer period of time where you try to engage the public, and suddenly the students say, "We don't like this."
Yeah, but they would always have the power to do that, I think.
Yeah, that's.
Or we should have a dialogue about it, but they will ultimately have to,
So they should be able to say, well, we should stop this now, even though we've announced publicly that people can participate, we have to stop it now.
Yeah, or is teaching at the university public?
It is in Denmark.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So we can actually not stop them. people.
No, you can't stop people from coming, but yeah.
So it's if you say, if you create an event, so that event is open, but it's part of a continuous course which is closed. So,
But I
so
don't think
it,
you can
it
close
has
your,
clear,
yeah, but
it
I think
has
the point
clear
is you can't
boundaries.
close your courses in Denmark.
You can't.
No, you can't.
I can walk into every classroom in
Yes.
Denmark.
That's how it was in the UC system in California.
Yeah.
But it's not the same, so generally it's the same for lectures, but if you have a seminar, you can close the door.
Probably.
The problem is no one wants to come right now. And that's the problem, right?
Exactly, and the public kind of totally disconnected with this opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but no, I have another, a problem with, lecturers, peers saying, no, I don't want you coming into my classroom because the way I teach is my private business. So that wouldn't fly in Denmark, right?
But also, like in this move you're doing, you're actually inviting people in and asking them to collaborate with the students. So what exactly the students say, well, this is part of our education. We don't want these outside judges coming in via Twitter and so on. What then are you going to do?
Yeah.
So that's,
Then you would have to negotiate the concept of public, right?
Okay, can we move on to, so your group, you worked on integrating practitioners,
That's
right?
actually related to this one.
Okay, will you walk us through this? Please,
So I don't think we got to the context actually. We have the problem. So what the problem somehow is in this behind this pattern is if we have a subject matter that somehow is relevant to a practice or something in society, then the problem can be that within the course, the course tends to close around itself, and maybe you try to set up cases that become artificial or simulations of a real practice. So, as we've written here, assignments can seem artificial to students, they're just simulations, and so the problem could be, I would really like to show how this theory, the subject area is very relevant to practices. So that would be the problem. How do we somehow make it relevant, and how do we see this connection between theory and practice? And we talked about also this is also a matter of we started out by calling it integrating experts, but then there was a point in saying that what we want to integrate is a different kind of expertise. It's not we don't want to have another professor coming with a different perspective on theory. We want something who's a representative of the practice, who can ask annoying questions about, well, I have 17 employers in my group and they don't like each other, and the complicated things from practice that they bring in. So which will challenge the more theoretical work from the students. So that's a problem, and that's something that we cannot be solved within the confines of the course if we don't bring in the practice. Forces, there are no forces in the document. When we have a solution, this is a work in progress.
Actually, we use the word integrating because we didn't want to invite, we wanted to integrate. Because you can invite people in, they just come in, they do something, we go again. We much want to use the word integrating because we want to see a relationship build between practice and classroom.
Yes.
So here comes the solution.
The solution, yeah. So we wrote something that the practitioners should be the ones who are able to demonstrate the relevance of what we're working on, in the course.
And then what kind of level is this pattern? Is it in one way it's kind of an abstract overall pattern, because you can do this in different ways. But maybe if we should stick to this as one pattern without sub-patterns, then one thing we need to talk about developing a joint project space. So we need to somehow say we have a project, it lasts 3 months as a beginning, some milestones, and we end somewhere. So in that sense, we can draw in practitioners. For instance, that would be one thing, to frame the problem. What is actually, we should have a very practical, a problem that's very local or very much connected to a practice. So that would be one thing, help framing the problem. It may not come from outside, but the practitioner should help frame the problem. Then we can have, I think we talked about, we had examples of then we bring in the expert or the practitioner again at the end to see what happened. But it would be interesting also to have the practitioner respond to preliminary ideas, arguments, products, whatever we have. So we have some things in the process. I think the last sentence that's not finished has to do with the end product. I think that's the idea. Also at the end.
Part of the evaluation.
Yeah. So those are ideas of integrating and not just having visits. Visiting.
This nature.
Yes, exactly.
So we have real dialogues and a real relationship building up.
Yeah. What else?
To say we struggled, and things still struggle a bit to look at the scope of this, because they can be experts, can be kind of used for lots of different things in lots of different ways, and the problem is how broad do we make the scope? Is it more or less just with connecting to the practitioner, to the real world, and that's it? And how to do it and how to use it, and what value it adds, discounts in some lower level patterns, or do we focus on some of these lower level patterns, and we're constantly jumping up and down and some to see
Could you in some way kind of, not examples, but then work with two examples, implementations of this, like experts from corporations and experts from, if you have like other ideas in mind.
One or two different things. One could be indeed just a guest lecture, where someone from the field gives some war stories, and the students say, okay, now I see why it is important to.
But that was not what we talked about.
Yeah, but that's what we discussed, and that could be one way.
Yeah.
It's maybe not the strongest, but it's stronger if you have someone coming in the beginning with a problem, say this is my problem, and then you as teacher, okay, your assignment is to solve the problem, and then you get some feedback in midterm, and at the end you present your solution, and that's more motivating. And so the question was, do we go on a higher level and say, well, the most important thing going on here is to have someone from outside? Or is it more specific, working on a project, or is it, guest lecture is also a pattern, but maybe not the most strong one. It could also be that you get online feedback from an expert on some artifacts you created, which is, so, but there's always this external expert involved, which is a pattern in itself. But so this is where we, I think, at least I was struggling. I think we all were struggling with that. Where how to scope it. That's the core of what we want to describe here.
Both the kind of integration, what role does person have, and also the level of integration.
So perhaps one part of the answer could lie in the word we choose. Like you talked about, Sarah, is it integrating experts? Is it using experts? Is it inviting experts? Is it working alongside experts? Because I think that will tone the pattern towards, because guest lectures is not integrating experts.
That's where we choose it.
So we I think because we had a related project pattern we called partnership projects.
Yes.
And the idea here is that we haven't written it yet, but the idea here is that work on a project in partnership with stakeholders in the real world. So they could be commercial stakeholders or social enterprise or NGOs or whatever. So you do a project for and with some external organization. And I think that this is, this is different than integrating experts, because when you say integrating experts, I mean it's not necessarily even in a sort of a project-based paradigm,
Not
right?
necessarily partnership. Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a partnership, right? And I mean, here, like I said, a practitioner can come and pose a problem, and then responds to the student's work, but it's more of an interaction or a dialogue and not a
I
partnership.
think actually the second paragraph that might be too specific. I think the beginning of solution attempt to demonstrate the relevance of knowledge and skills and practice. That's the core. How they do it through giving a guest lecture, not very strong, but still an application, or involving them in real world projects, and that would be a related pattern then, which is much stronger. Or having just doing reviews on some artifacts from some. That's what we also do on some projects. That these are all different, more specific implementations of that more generic pattern, inviting people from outside to show students it's not only us, but there's a world outside, and what we do here is really related to what's going on out there.
And I also think that perhaps, but then correct me if I'm wrong, I think actually that's an interesting difference, because partnership projects for me is, so partners come and pose a problem that student then can work on, but that's like the outside in. Or the inside out, so you have a project and the student go and work on it and help the corporation or whatever, with that problem. How I hear you talk about it is actually more the opposite, like you want experts to relate to the things students are working with and helping them with it. I think that's a really, really important difference. That, you can have students help partners or corporations, like research assistants you can use in your research, or you can have experts, invite experts in to really, try to enhance the students' work. A bit like you did in the game design lab, Yishai. They didn't help you, you helped them. I think that's a really, really important difference there, because often, I don't know, we will tend to do the one more than the other, and I think that the reflection on who is helping who is really important.
But also, I mean, this partnership, this is specifically under, kind of a production paradigm. And, this could be, you're integrating, it could be actually in something that's more kind of analytical, reflective, hermeneutic. So it's not focused at creating artifacts, but more kind of understanding the world, and still you're in dialogue with an external expert. So that's why I think, between these two there's a link, but not a hierarchical link.
Yeah, but I think there's a very strong link. I just think that might actually be the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Because I think both can be analytical as well, right? You can invite experts in to reflect on, the context of, I don't know, a philosophy at the time for that matter. But who's working with who, perhaps, And I think the integrating experts is harder and rarer than the other part.
Yeah.
Okay. So shall we move to our, I think so. We had real world products. And this is, who wants to present this?
You are scrolling, so you own the mouse, so that's good.
I can do whatever you tell me with the mouse. I will be your agent.
No, I mean, it's just an overall pattern to try to engage the student, give them a sense of what they're doing in the classroom, or that is actually meaningful and relevant to the real life, and not just for the sake of school. And also that going out, putting real world products into the world also facilitates and must encompass empathy and responsibility for the world around them. And we were also talking about the dimension of then putting things out into the real world exposes the students also to real world evaluation. So there's a problem there. The solution was overall therefore to assign students to create modest contribution, and we actually emphasized, or we should emphasize maybe that it's modest contribution. So it's not like, oh, big new thing, revolutionizing, but actually small things matter as well in a real world context, and we can create stuff that they can place in the real world. And we also came in on the idea that, of course, the easiest way to do that would be digital. So putting in digital mixed found things were probably the easiest way to access the real world.
That's
yeah.
kind of assuming that digital world is real. But
Yeah, exactly.
But
Or
for
all
us,
philosophical.
yeah.
Yeah, should be.
What the necessarily as a partnership of finding something, but it could be, now we choose to participate in this public discussion or something, or we come with a historic view of the U.S. elections or something. So we don't let's say direct it towards a specific. Is that how it should be?
Yeah. So we said, and this I think is for me always a bit problematic when you say this applies everywhere. But we thought that this is a fairly generic pattern, which means you actually need to drill down into more specific sub patterns to really make it work. But we're thinking, are there any contexts in which this is not relevant? And we said, well, actually, even nursery children, can we engage them in this idea of putting something out in the real world? And we thought, yeah, why not? Or is this limited to subjects which are specifically touching on social, political, ethical issues? Well, actually, one of the problems that we have in courses, like mathematics or science, that says, oh, this isn't relevant to real life.
Yeah.
So actually they're kind of doing something with mathematics which would be connected to real life has its value.
Besides a few other questions I will ask them is, you say there's a problem that they do not connect to real life. Well, I would question, well, is it a problem? I don't feel the pain here. I see somehow, but it's not really something. I think, well, if we can reach the same things with artificial projects, why care? So what's really what's?
I think it's for the knowledge not to be confined. Knowledge and learning is quite context bound, and you always have the problem of transfer of the knowledge that they actually gain, in some sense, in the schooling sense, and then afterwards they forgot everything about it, or at least they haven't tried to applicate the knowledge on something in real life. It's really bound to the schooling context, and that can be problematic.
I don't read this.
No.
But
That's
right.
problem statements.
That's what I meant.
Okay,
I see something behind that which is not here. in there.
So
Oh,
that
yes,
that
yeah,
issue
very
of transfer and seeing seeing the seeing the applicability of knowledge is definitely something we haven't written. We should. The other thing that we wanted to emphasize is, and then again, it actually goes back to the values that we talked about in terms of our concept of hybridity, is that we want to develop a sense of empathy and responsibility for the world. And in order to do that, we need to engage students with the world. So, in terms of solution, we had some examples, and in terms of implementation details, do you want to?
Yeah, we had different, for instance, we talked about risk. I mean, particularly for younger children, school, primary school, if you ask them to put something online on YouTube or whatever, you get pretty harsh reactions. So how to work with something like that? And we can't protect them from it, and we should also recognize it's actually a learning opportunity to learn how to mitigate or work with those kinds of risks because they are real. And we see, and also I think if we put this on there's a tension here in this kind of work that potentially doing something in the open can have a big social value. So you could experience that you create a short film, for instance, and you get 1 million likes on YouTube. And then when you look at the academic side of it, it's actually it's failed because it's not very reflected and so on. So there's a sort of tension there. So that's also something. Yeah,
And the student comes in and says, "What do you mean you gave me a C? I have 100 million likes." Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that is, but that's I think we talked about it. There's a balance of. I mean, because you get so engaged with solving a problem, doing a product, doing something nice, that you sometimes forget theory of reflection. So how do you sort of balance that? That becomes very important. That's a liability limitation as well as it's yeah, something to think about in the implementation. How we actually try to balance those different risks and needs.
I think maybe we should. I mean, we mentioned the kind of the values that we see reflected in this pattern, but maybe we should actually do two of the two sub patterns that we thought of this, and one is what's this?
Just to say it now, but I have some more comments on the problem and the context, and then we could do this later.
Okay.
And you said we have dinner coming up?
Yeah, so that's why I just want to quickly mention these two sub patterns. One is, and this image should go from, yeah. But the idea about guerrilla art is that it's a special case of real-world products where students create a small provocative intervention in a public space. So we had examples, and this isn't very well developed, but we had examples of, and it's brought an example of high school students creating art pieces from curated trash. And I also had an example of students occupying like a parking lot and transforming it into a garden. So, this particular, I think it's sort of very much kind of in tune with, critical pedagogy and kind of critical action and interaction in the world. So we thought that's kind of interesting enough to note it as a specific sub-pattern. And then there's the partnership projects that we mentioned. There he showcases, it's a separate pattern that came up here, but I think we actually haven't developed it very much, right? So we probably, this is very, very kind of preliminary, so probably not a lot to talk about here. So,
I see how to question.
sorry?
I see how to question is important.
How to
How to
balance.
balance it.
Why should I, is my reaction to questions. And the answer to that question, that comes to the
Is
core.
why bother?
Why should I balance create? What happens if I don't do it?
Yeah.
That's how I'm first interested in, and then after that I'm interested in how to solve that.
Good. Okay, so that's it. Yes, so I think yeah, it is dinner time. And yeah, like I said, I think I mean, I have to say we've earned our dinner.
Oh, yeah.
What do you want to say after dinner? We discussed what we're going to do after dinner, and we said, well, today we're not going to be working up to midnight because you can burn that candle only so many times. But what we suggest is after dinner, everyone comes in and spends half an hour, 20 minutes on one pattern that they weren't involved in writing. So either edit it if you feel comfortable enough to do that, or comment on it if you're unsure. And then another 20 minutes, 30 minutes on another pattern, and then you're free to play games or discuss patterns, go for a moonlight walk, whatever. Okay?
Perfect.
So we'll see you all here at 7.
Is dinner, when is dinner happen? In the same place we ate lunch?
Yes. Okay, thank you. And we're